court, counsel, members of the jury. When I came to you Tuesday morning, I did start talking about actions speak louder than words. And I was not talking about the actions of coming to court to testify. I was talking about the actions of people the night of the alleged incident. I'm going to highlight that quickly, but first I want to go into some things the state said I need to reply to kind of immediately. I do agree in the 35-page jury packet. I promised 25. I misguessed by 10, so I apologize. But I do agree. There is no evidence in here that does not say that you have to throw yourself out of a car. I agree. It also doesn't in here say helicopter video or aviation video or a number of other things. So I do agree that things like that aren't specifically delineated in the jury instructions, but you have to look at what they actually do say. So when I talked about trying to get out of a car, or when I do shortly, I'm specifically talking about page 3 of the kidnapping instruction, wherein kidnapping requires a confinement, an abduction, or an imprisonment of someone against their will. So I do agree it doesn't say that you have to like throw yourself out of a car or crash into police cars or anything like that. So I do agree with the state on that. But what you will find is you have to consider the circumstances of people when they're in these situations, and I certainly would argue that, and I will argue shortly when I talk about that individual, that having the ability to demonstrate by your actions that you're not confined is certainly more important than what one says in a courtroom. Furthermore, it's highlighted in the state's first close, the ID card. This ID card that somehow magically laid on the perfect the perfect step in this apartment building, and was only discovered as it was like handed to this third alleged victim. Again, we don't ask jurors to defy common sense, and that's just simply things don't ever work out that perfectly. And lastly, one of the exhibits that the state referenced in their closing dealt with the angles of shootings and which cars were indicated. I would ask you to use your common sense about how bullets travel. Bullets travel in straight lines, and consider the angles and that there are different cars in between those cars, and you'll have an opportunity to look at that as well. But let's go back to actions speak louder than words. So I would again highlight that, and I'm going to do my best to refer to these young women by their initials just out of their privacy, my respect for them. But HCB, you have to consider that she rode in a car with someone who apparently was falling asleep on and off, to the point where she talked about that he only woke up when she broke for a cab. You have to consider if someone's such a heavy sleeper in a urban environment like Tampa, there were ample opportunities when you look at the maps that the detectives showed today on heavy urban streets full of businesses to get help. And I agree, again, these kidnapping instructions don't say that like you're only kidnapped if you can't stop at a Wawa and you can only make it to a stop. It doesn't say that, I agree. But you have to consider the degree to which one is actually confined, abducted, or imprisoned if the person that's doing it is allegedly asleep. And so asleep that they're asleep in a car, and so asleep that they only wake up when you slam on the brakes for a cat. You also have to consider how someone can be abducted, confined, or imprisoned when they tell the person to put their gun away and they do. Because as you'll recall, she testified several times when she would say, put it away, I don't want to see it, put it away, I don't want to see it, and the person did. Remember, sure, you have to, again, apply your common sense that if someone's genuinely going to shoot someone and genuinely going to threaten someone with a gun, that if you just say, hey, look, I don't want to see the gun anymore, say, oh, okay, put it away. That's your common sense, and again, we don't ask jurors to leave that at the front of the courthouse. We certainly wouldn't in this case. When I started talking to you guys Tuesday, I brought up that all jury trials really come down to three things: facts, law, common sense. Through the facts, I talked about testimonial evidence. I'm going to highlight a number of different witnesses I think are of particular importance in this case. I'm going to start again, out of respect, HBC, who was the first witness we heard from Tuesday morning. She testified again, they drove around for hours, she doesn't know Tampa, so I'm not faulting her for that, but that the person in the car with her fell asleep, again, over and over, and only woke up at one point to avoid hitting a cat. You have to ask yourself, in that circumstance, You don't stop. You don't do anything. I understand the desire not to crash your car into a cop car or any traffic. I appreciate that. But you have a lifeline, as the state called it. One could whisper, one could ask for help, one could do a number of different things. That's why actions speak louder than words, because it's easy to come here and say I was confined, but when you have the means to escape and you don't do it, you have to ask yourself, do those actions speak louder than words? She also talked about looking for a car. And again, if you're willing to think through these things, if I'm willing to intentionally cause a crash, but you won't ask the person that's talking to you for at least an hour in your ear, are you truly confined? Are you truly without the means to get away? You're on these heavy industrial and heavy commercial streets, and you don't, stop at a gas station or any of a number of other things. And we've heard from at least 3 different law enforcement witnesses that there were a ton of police out because there were multiple different crime scenes. If you recall, there was the Residence Inn by Marriott. Then there are people going to a home on West Cypress. There's people looking in basically we call like North, South Tampa. There's a stop by Memorial Hospital. There's police everywhere in South Tampa at that point because they're driving around looking for this person. And this HBC, claims to never have seen police to stop, never had the opportunity to try to do so. You also have to consider, again, that actions speak louder than words, that the car was stopped and the person that attacked her got from behind her, your required testimony, that she knew the person was tall because that person tried to step over the center of the car. So tried to step over what I think we'd all call like the center console, but couldn't because they were so tall. So that person actually got out of the car and went around to get in the front passenger seat. Again, someone that is truly confined, abducted, or imprisoned that has the means to drive away, one would imagine they certainly would. And this is not asking somebody to do some Jason Bourne move or anything. It's just to ask them to do exactly what they had done all night, and that's drive away. The person was out of the car. The car obviously had locks because we've heard discussions over and over about how her door was unlocked when she was ultimately pulled out by her girlfriend at the time, and the passenger was locked. So the car had functioning locks. So when the attacker was out of the car, if she truly were being kidnapped or falsely imprisoned or held against her will, she had the means available to drive off, but she didn't. Detective Baranowski this morning, through her testimony, 2 exhibits were presented, and those, again, showed the areas of travel, GPS locations, and these were heavy, heavy commercial roads where there's a ton of traffic. So again, that demonstrates that this wasn't some, no offense to Ruskin, rural Ruskin Road where there was no one, where they drove for an hour and never saw anyone. This is someone that's in the city and is, I won't say surrounded by traffic, but certainly engaging in a lot of traffic. We all saw a number of red light cameras. We saw downtown Tampa. We saw lots of traffic and lots of opportunities to get help if she truly needed it. Next, I want to talk to you about, again, out of respect for these young women, YSD. Her testimony was noteworthy because she testified that the shooter was only able to get one leg out of the car when the shot was made. And that's noteworthy when you consider the angles with which the bullets allegedly traveled. Because if whoever ultimately shot these people was in the car and they're shooting out of the side of the car, for bullets to travel beyond that car, they would have had to go through the black Toyota because the black Toyota was there, and ultimately that's where she was struck. And her testimony is also noteworthy because she was looking back. She actually was paying attention, whereas her sister, who was ultimately struck, obviously wasn't looking back, hence why she got struck basically in the back left of her head. We all know she wasn't looking at the shooter because bullets travel in straight lines. The bullet wouldn't have looped around and hit her in the back of the head. YSD's testimony is also, I would say, critical for another consideration. When ultimately her and her girlfriend at the time get away, they run into this person in either a white car or a white Mercedes. Both were testified, and that doesn't really matter. But they get to help, basically. And their first call isn't to the men and women of the police with guns and helicopters. And they know there's a helicopter because they can hear it. They know there's police because they've been in contact with them all night. They don't call those people. So they don't, it's like call for the proverbial cavalry. They call their sister. And I appreciate the YSD was worried about her sister. I have no doubt. I mean, it's a horrific situation. I wouldn't want to be around a sibling in some sort of a shooting. But You have to ask yourself, if you truly thought at that time that your sister needed some kind of help and was being chased by someone with a gun, and you know the police are literally right around the corner, you don't call them. And it's also noteworthy at that time because I believe the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown for that matter, that she didn't know her sister was shot at that point. And she didn't because when you actually watch the aviation video, you'll see that they're leaving at the same time. And that's consistent with their testimony because when you watch it, you can almost, at least in my mind, you can sort of see the point when someone started yelling, he has a gun, because that's when everyone's demeanor changes. And that's when people start moving away from the car versus to the car. But it's critical when you consider that if you're to believe their story, they escaped a violent kidnapping, a rape, a shooting, and the first call isn't the guys with the helicopters, the women with the guns, it's to your sister. And that becomes more important here shortly. The evidence also showed that YSD referred to the shooters having a full beard. You all recall every witness, I would say, full beard, and they say yes. And I say ear to ear like mine, yes. And that's because that's very distinct and different than a Fu Manchu or some sort of a, I guess a hipper, smaller beard. But YSD, for that matter, testified that a full beard. NSD, she did not see who shot her. Again, that makes sense. It makes sense where she was in her car, it makes sense the direction she was going, and also makes sense where she was shot. Again, bullets travel in straight lines until they're given a reason not to, and the thin window of a Toyota Corolla certainly wouldn't make a bullet redirect at a 90-degree angle. Her testimony, though, is, again, I would argue, really important when you consider that when asked about the BB gun that is in the style of a Glock 19 without the red cap, she said it was always in the car. Wasn't something she brought with her that day. It was always in the car, just like her softball bat. So